Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defender watching the blue glow of hyperspace fade away as his ship dropped back into normal space. The massive space station ahead of them looked like a crystal flower blooming in the darkness, with its 12 spiral arms reaching out in all directions. This was Harmony Station, the seat of power for the Galactic Council, and today would witness something that had never happened before in the 3 years since humanity joined the galactic community. Ambassador Lisa Carter adjusted her formal, diplomatic robes as she prepared to deliver the most important speech of her career. She had spent 15 years working her way up through Earth's diplomatic corps, learning alien languages, studying their cultures, and always maintaining the careful balance of respect and restraint that had defined humanity's relationship with the galaxy. Today all of that would change. The shuttle bay doors opened with a soft hiss as Carter's transport docked with the station. 2 years ago she would have been nervous about addressing the council. Now she felt only a cold determination that had been building for months. The attacks on human colonies had started small, just a few raids on outer settlements that the galaxy dismissed as the work of pirates. When human trade ships began disappearing, the council suggested better security measures. When entire colonies went dark, they offered thoughts and prayers. Carter walked through the curved corridors of Harmony Station, her footsteps echoing in the halls that had been designed to accommodate dozens of different alien species. The ceilings were high enough for the towering Regelians. The gravity was set to accommodate the heavy world Draconians, and the atmosphere was carefully balanced to support all the different breathing requirements of the council members. Humans had adapted to all of these conditions without complaint, just as they had adapted to every other restriction placed on them. The council chamber was a vast circular room, with seats arranged in concentric circles around a central speaking platform. Each species had their own section designed for their specific needs. The Zephyrians floated in crystalline containers filled with their native atmospheric mix. The Corvan Empire representatives sat in their heavy environmental suits, their insectoid forms barely visible through the thick armor plating. The aquatic cetaceans swam in their water-filled observation spheres. Dozens of other species filled the chamber, all of them watching with curiosity as the human ambassador took her place at the center. Carter activated the universal translator and began to speak. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber, automatically converted into the native languages of every species present. She had practiced this speech 100 times. But the words still felt strange on her tongue because they represented such a fundamental shift in humanity's approach to galactic relations. Honored delegates of the Galactic Council, she began, following the traditional formal opening. I stand before you today not as a petitioner seeking aid, but as a representative of Earth delivering a final warning. A ripple of interest passed through the chamber. The Corvan delegate, a massive creature whose species had been responsible for most of the recent attacks on human settlements, clicked its mandibles in what passed for amusement among their kind. The sound was translated as laughter, and several other species joined in with their own versions of the same expression. Carter continued without acknowledging the reaction. For 3 years, humanity has followed every protocol established by this council. We have respected the boundaries set by more established species. We have limited our expansion to areas deemed acceptable by the galactic community. We have submitted to inspections of our military capabilities. We have accepted restrictions on our technology development. We have done all of this in the spirit of peaceful coexistence and mutual respect. The Mechari delegate, a jellyfish-like creature that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, interrupted with a question. Is the human delegation lodging a formal complaint? The proper procedures for grievances are clearly outlined in council regulations. No, Carter replied, her voice steady and calm. We are not filing a complaint. We are delivering a warning. The laughter died away as the delegates began to sense that something was different about this human presentation. Carter had attended dozens of council sessions over the years, always polite, always diplomatic, always willing to compromise. The woman standing before them now carried herself with a confidence that seemed almost threatening. In the past 6 months, Carter continued, 17 human colonies have been attacked. 437 human civilians have been killed. 22 human trade vessels have been seized or destroyed. When we brought these incidents to the Council's attention, we were told that these were isolated events, the work of pirates and criminals operating outside the authority of any legitimate government. The Corvan delegate shifted uncomfortably in his environmental suit. Everyone in the chamber knew that the attacks had been carried out by Corvan military units, but the fiction of plausible deniability had been maintained through careful political maneuvering. Carter's expression hardened as she continued. We have also discovered that our restricted technology has been shared with other species without our consent. Our industrial capabilities have been systematically undermined through trade restrictions that apply only to human worlds. Our expansion into unclaimed systems has been blocked by suddenly discovering new environmental protections for regions that have been empty for millions of years. The Altarian representative, a tall humanoid with silver skin and large black eyes, spoke up. The Council has always acted in the best interests of galactic stability. Newer species must be gradually integrated into the community to prevent disruption of established trade relationships and territorial boundaries. Established by whom? Carter asked. And enforced how? The question hung in the air like a challenge. The delegates were beginning to realize that this was not going to be a typical diplomatic session where humanity politely requested assistance and then gracefully accepted whatever scraps the Council chose to offer. Carter activated a holographic display that showed the recent attacks on human settlements. The images were brutal and clear, showing the aftermath of military strikes against civilian targets. These attacks were not carried out by pirates. They were conducted by regular military units of the Corvan Empire using advanced weapons and following coordinated battle plans. The seizure of our trade vessels was not random piracy, but a systematic effort to strangle human commerce. The Corvan delegate finally spoke, his voice carrying the arrogance that had defined his species' interactions with humanity from the beginning. The young species makes serious accusations without proof. Even if such proof existed, what could they possibly do about it? Your pathetic little fleet poses no threat to the established order of this galaxy. Carter smiled for the first time since entering the chamber, and something about that smile made several delegates shift nervously in their seats. That brings me to the purpose of today's address. For 3 years, humanity has been what you might call polite. We have followed your rules, accepted your restrictions, and endured your condescension because we believed that peaceful coexistence was possible. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in before continuing. But we have been operating under a fundamental misunderstanding. We assumed that your restrictions were based on legitimate concerns about galactic stability. We now understand that they were based on the assumption that humanity was weak and could be safely ignored or exploited. The chamber fell silent as Carter's words were translated and processed by the various species present. The human ambassador stood calmly. At the center of the room, no longer the supplicant seeking approval, but something else entirely. This is humanity's final warning, Carter announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. We have been holding back out of respect for galactic peace and in the hope that we could find our place in this community through cooperation and mutual respect. Those hopes have been proven false. The attacks on our colonies, the seizure of our vessels, and the systematic efforts to undermine our development end now. The Corvan delegate clicked his mandibles again, but this time there was no laughter in the sound. The young species threatens us? How amusing. What exactly do you intend to do about our perfectly legal military operations? Carter's smile widened, and for the first time in 3 years of diplomatic service, she felt genuinely happy. We are done being polite. Admiral Ben Hayes stood in the command center of the UES Retribution, watching the tactical display that showed the approaching Corvan Third Fleet. The massive alien warships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian in the light of the New Haven system's twin suns. According to the intelligence reports, this was one of the most powerful military forces in Corvan space, commanded by war leader Thex himself and composed of over 200 heavy cruisers and battleships. The coded transmission from Earth Command had arrived just 30 minutes ago, and Hayes had read it 3 times before the full implications sank in. After 3 years of careful diplomatic restraint, humanity was finally taking the gloves off. The message was brief and direct, signed by Fleet Admiral Rodriguez herself. Operation Revelation is authorized. Show them what we really are. Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez approached the command chair with a datapad in her hands. She was no relation to the Fleet Admiral despite sharing the same last name, but she had inherited the same fierce determination that seemed to run in certain military families. Sir, the Corvan fleet is broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. They claim we have exactly 1 hour to evacuate all human personnel from New Haven and surrender the colony to Corvan. Authority. Hayes nodded grimly as he studied the tactical display. The numbers were overwhelming by any conventional military standard. The Corvan Third Fleet outnumbered the human defenders by more than 10 to 1, and their ships were larger and more heavily armed than anything humanity had revealed to the galaxy. By all the rules of galactic warfare, this should have been a massacre. They are correct about the numbers, Hayes replied, standing to address his crew. But they are about to learn something about human history that we have kept classified for 3 years. The bridge crew turned to look at their admiral with expressions of curiosity and anticipation. Most of them had been serving on frontier patrol duty for months, watching helplessly as Corvan raiders attacked human settlements and disappeared back into deep space before any response could be organized. The forced restraint had been eating away at morale throughout the human fleet. Hayes activated the ship's internal communication system so his words would reach every crew member aboard the Retribution. For 3 years, we have been playing by galactic rules of engagement. We have used only the weapons and tactics that other species consider acceptable. We have fought like civilized beings according to their definition of civilization. He paused, looking around the bridge at officers who had trained for years in combat techniques they had never been allowed to use. But we are not like other species. Every conflict humanity has ever fought has been against other humans. Every strategy we have developed has been tested against enemies who think like us, who adapt like us, who fight with the same ruthless determination that we do. Chief Engineer Pete Collins brought up the weapons control display, showing systems that had been locked away since the day humanity joined the galactic community. Sir, all restricted systems are coming online. The new weapon configurations are ready for combat testing. Hayes smiled for the first time in months. The weapons they had been forced to hide were not just more powerful than anything the galaxy had seen. They were designed by a species that had spent 10,000 years learning how to kill its own kind. Nuclear weapons, kinetic bombardment systems, chemical warfare, biological agents, and psychological warfare techniques that would make the peaceful galactic species recoil in horror. Send a message to War Leader Thex, Hayes ordered. Tell him that he has exactly 1 hour to withdraw his forces from human space, or he will discover why humans do not have a single military doctrine. We have thousands of them, and we learned every one by using it against ourselves. The communication officer, a young woman named Helen Brooks, looked up from her console with a puzzled expression. Sir, the Corvan commander is requesting clarification of your message. He says it makes no sense according to standard galactic military theory. Hayes chuckled, a sound that somehow managed to be both amused and threatening. Of course it makes no sense to him. His species has been fighting the same way for 1,000 years because they have never faced an enemy that forced them to evolve. They developed their military doctrine fighting against species that were weaker, slower, and less adaptable than they were. He gestured toward the tactical display showing the Corvan fleet. Look at their formation. Perfect spacing, textbook. Deployment, every ship in its assigned position. They are following a battle plan that was probably developed centuries ago, and has never needed to be changed because it always worked. Amy Rodriguez studied the enemy formation with the practiced. I have a tactical officer. They are assuming we will meet them in open space combat using similar formations and weapons. Standard galactic engagement protocols. Exactly, Hayes confirmed. But we did not learn to fight by conquering primitive species. We learned to fight by trying to survive against other humans. Every weapon we ever developed was designed to counter weapons we had already built. Every strategy we ever created was tested against enemies who knew our previous strategies and had developed counters for them. The bridge crew began to understand what their admiral was telling them. Humanity had not been weakened by its history of constant warfare, it had been forged by it. Every human conflict had been an arms race between equally intelligent opponents, creating a cycle of innovation and adaptation that had produced the most effective military force in the galaxy. Dr. Kelly Turner, the ship's xenobiology specialist, approached the command station with a tablet containing her research data. Admiral, the psychological profiles of the Corvan command structure are complete. I have identified 17 specific neurological vulnerabilities that can be exploited through directed electromagnetic pulses. Hayes raised an eyebrow. Directed at their nervous systems? Precisely, Turner confirmed. Each species in the galaxy has different neurological structures. We can develop weapons that specifically target their brain chemistry, causing anything from mild disorientation to complete nervous system shutdown. The concept was so alien to galactic military, thinking that no species had ever considered it. Warfare in the galaxy was conducted according to ancient codes of honor that prohibited attacks on non-combatants, the use of biological weapons, and most forms of psychological warfare. These restrictions had been developed by species that had never faced existential threats and had never been forced to develop truly effective military doctrine. Hayes turned to his weapons officer, Commander Dan Foster. Are their kinetic bombardment systems ready? Foster nodded grimly. All tungsten penetrators are loaded and targeted. We can crack their largest ships with a single hit. And the electronic warfare suite? Ready to deploy, sir. We can take control of their communications, scramble their targeting systems, and feed false information to their command structure. Hayes looked around the bridge at officers who had been trained in combat techniques that the galaxy had never seen. Ladies and, gentlemen, for 3 years we have been the polite newcomers to galactic society. We have followed their rules, accepted their restrictions, and fought according to their definition of civilized warfare. He activated the tactical display showing the approaching Corvan fleet. Today we stop pretending to be something we are. Not today we show the galaxy what humans really are. The hour passed quickly as both fleets prepared for battle. The Corvans maintained their perfect formation, expecting the humans to meet them in traditional ship-to-ship combat. War leader Thex had commanded hundreds of successful campaigns against weaker species, and he saw no reason why this encounter should be any different. The human fleet scattered into what appeared to be a random pattern, completely abandoning the formation-based tactics that had dominated galactic warfare for millennia. Individual ships moved independently, using stealth technology and electronic countermeasures that made them nearly invisible to Corvan sensors. Hayes watched the tactical display as his fleet prepared to demonstrate why humanity had been holding back. The galaxy was about to learn that Earth's greatest export was not technology or culture, but warfare refined to an art form through 10,000 years of fighting against themselves. All ships, Hayes announced over the fleet communication channel. You are authorized to engage using unrestricted human military doctrine. Show them what we learned fighting each other. Commander Steve Phillips gripped the controls of his fighter as he led the first wave of human ships toward the Corvan fleet. The sleek interceptor moved through space like a predator hunting its prey, using stealth systems that made it nearly invisible to the enemy sensors. Behind him, 47 other human pilots followed in a formation that would have confused any galactic military analyst because it followed no recognizable pattern. The Corvan Third Fleet maintained their perfect Battle line, massive ships arranged in precise rows with their weapons pointed forward. War leader Thex had commanded this fleet for 12 years and had never lost a battle. His ships were larger, more heavily armored, and more numerous than the human vessels approaching them. By every standard of galactic warfare, this should have been a simple victory. Phillips activated his communication system to address his squadron. Remember what we learned in training? These aliens have never fought anyone who adapts during battle. They expect us to charge straight at them like every other species they have conquered. Instead, we are going to show them how humans really fight. The first surprise came when the human fighters simply disappeared from Corvan sensors. Advanced stealth technology that had been developed during Earth's various wars suddenly rendered the approaching ships invisible. War leader Thex watched his tactical display with growing confusion as the enemy contacts simply vanished. "Weapons commander," Thex growled through his translator. "Where are the human ships?" The Corvan officer checked his instruments with increasing panic. "Sir, they were approaching on a direct attack vector 30 seconds ago. Now I show nothing on any sensor band." Meanwhile, Phillips and his squadron had split into 6 separate groups and were approaching the Corvan fleet from different angles. This was a classic human tactic called a multi-vector assault, developed during the Pacific War centuries ago and refined through countless conflicts. The idea was simple: attack from so many directions that the enemy could not defend against all of them. Dr. Kelly Turner monitored the battle from her position aboard the UES Retribution, watching as her psychological warfare systems began to take effect. She had studied Corvan brain chemistry for months, and now she was using that knowledge to create targeted electromagnetic pulses that would disrupt their neural functions. "Admiral Hayes," she reported, "the Corvan command structure is beginning to show signs of disorientation. Their reaction times are slowing and their coordination is breaking down." Hayes nodded grimly. "How long until full effect?" "Approximately 8 minutes, sir. Their neural pathways are more complex than we initially thought, but the disruption is definitely working." The concept of targeting an enemy's biological systems was so alien to galactic thinking that the Corvans had no defenses against it. Their weapons were designed to destroy ships, and their armor was built to stop physical projectiles. They had never considered that an enemy might attack their minds directly. Captain Nina Bell brought her destroyer into position beneath the Corvan flagship, using a maneuver that would have been impossible in traditional galactic warfare. The ship moved in complete silence, its engines designed to produce no detectable emissions. When she was less than a kilometer from the enemy hull, she activated weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. The kinetic penetrators were simple in concept, but devastating in execution. Tungsten rods accelerated to incredible speeds could punch through any armor that had ever been developed. The Corvan flagship, a massive vessel that had been the pride of their fleet, suddenly found itself with a hole the size of a building, punched straight through its center. "Direct hit on the command ship," Bell reported over the fleet communication channel. "Their armor might as well be paper against these weapons." War leader Thex felt his ship shudder as the human weapon tore through deck after deck of reinforced metal. Emergency alarms began blaring throughout the vessel as atmosphere rushed out through the massive breach. He had never seen anything like this in 30 years of military service. "Damage report," he demanded, trying to maintain control as his bridge crew struggled with systems that were failing throughout the ship. "Sir, we have lost primary power to all forward sections. The weapon went completely through our armor as if it was not there. Engineering reports that the breach cannot be sealed." Lieutenant Danny Foster piloted his fighter through the gap in the Corvan formation, using tactics that had been developed during Earth's various aerial conflicts. Instead of the stately, honorable combat that characterized galactic warfare, he fought like a human pilot trained to survive against other humans. He used the debris from damaged Corvan ships as cover, fired at targets while moving at maximum speed, and employed electronic countermeasures that made it impossible for the enemy to target him effectively. When a Corvan cruiser tried to track his movements, Foster simply shut down all his ship's systems and drifted like a piece of wreckage. Until the enemy gave up looking for him, The Corvan fleet began to fall apart as human tactics tore through their formations. Ships that had been designed to fight in organized battle lines found themselves facing enemies that attacked from unexpected angles, used weapons they had never encountered, and employed strategies that made no sense according to galactic military. Doctrine. Commander Sarah Mitchell led a boarding party onto a disabled Corvan vessel, using techniques that had been developed during Earth's urban warfare conflicts. Her Marines moved through the alien ship with deadly efficiency, using stun weapons and non-lethal gases to capture the crew rather than simply destroying them. "This is impossible," transmitted the Corvan ship commander as Mitchell's team secured the bridge. "No species fights like this. You use weapons that target our minds, you attack from directions we cannot predict, and you employ tactics that violate every principle of civilized warfare." Mitchell looked at the alien officer through her helmet's faceplate. "That is because no species has had to fight itself for survival for 10,000 years. We learned these tactics fighting each other. Every weapon we used was designed to counter weapons we had already built. Every strategy we employ was tested against enemies who knew our previous strategies." The battle lasted exactly 47 minutes. When it was over, the Corvan Third Fleet had been completely destroyed or captured. Not a single human ship had been lost, and casualties were minimal. The most powerful military force in Corvan space had been defeated by tactics and weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. War. Leader Thex found himself a prisoner aboard the UES Retribution, facing Admiral Hayes across a conference table. The massive Corvan warrior had been stripped of his weapons and armor, but his mandibles still clicked with defiance. "You have won this battle," Thex acknowledged, "but you have violated every law of galactic warfare. You used psychological weapons. You targeted civilian systems, and you employed tactics that are considered barbaric by civilized species." Hayes leaned back in his chair, studying the alien commander with the calm expression of a professional soldier. "You clearly do not understand the distinction. We have not used psychological weapons. We have used electronic warfare. We have not targeted civilian systems. We have attacked military installations. And we have not employed barbaric tactics. We have used conventional warfare by human standards." The Corvan leader's mandibles clicked in confusion. "Conventional warfare? If this is conventional, then what would you consider unrestricted combat?" Hayes smiled, and something about that expression made the massive alien warrior lean back in his chair. "If we were truly fighting without restraint, this conversation would not be happening. Your species would not be happening. We have been holding back because we hoped for peaceful coexistence. That hope has now been proven false." Through the viewport of the conference room, both commanders could see the wreckage of the Corvan fleet drifting in space around New Haven. The debris field stretched for thousands of kilometers, a testament to the effectiveness of human military doctrine when applied without restriction. "Send a message to your government," Hayes ordered. "Tell them that the humans are done being polite. Tell them that what happened here was just a demonstration of our conventional capabilities. And tell them that if they want to see what humans are really capable of, they should continue attacking our colonies." The surviving Corvan ships limped back toward their territory, carrying word of humanity's true nature. The galaxy was about to learn that Earth's greatest export was not technology or culture, but warfare refined to an art form through millennia of conflict against themselves. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened, exactly 72 hours after the Battle of New Haven. Harmony Station buzzed with activity as representatives from every major species gathered to discuss what many were calling the most significant military defeat in galactic history. The Corvan Third Fleet had been completely destroyed by a force 1/10 its size, and the implications were terrifying every government in known space. The Zephyrian High Speaker, a being of pure crystalline energy named Velthara, floated in the center of the chamber as delegates took their positions. Her voice carried the weight of ancient authority as she addressed the assembly through the universal translator system. "The humans have violated every principle of civilized warfare. They have employed tactics that are not just unconventional, they are barbaric. General Rick Thompson entered the chamber wearing the full-dress uniform of the United Earth Military, his chest covered with ribbons and medals that most aliens did not recognize. Unlike the diplomatic robes that previous human representatives had worn, his military bearing sent a clear message that humanity was no longer approaching the galaxy as supplicants, seeking acceptance. Thompson took his position at the central speaking platform without the usual diplomatic courtesies. He did not bow to the high speaker, did not acknowledge the traditional greetings of the various species, and did not wait for permission to begin speaking. The change in human behavior was as dramatic as their military capabilities. You requested this emergency session to discuss human military actions, Thompson stated, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded troops in actual combat. I am here to clarify several misconceptions that seem to have developed regarding our recent engagement with Corvan forces. The Mechari delegate, a jellyfish-like creature called Nex Vala, pulsed with agitated bioluminescence. Your species employed nuclear weapons against populated worlds. You targeted civilian infrastructure. You used biological warfare against sentient beings. These actions violate every treaty and convention that governs galactic civilization. Thompson's expression did not change as he activated a holographic display showing footage from the Battle of New Haven. You are mistaken on all counts. We did not use nuclear weapons, we used kinetic penetrators. We did not target civilian infrastructure. We attacked military vessels in open space. We did not employ biological warfare, we used electronic countermeasures against enemy communication systems. The Dracorian representative, a massive reptilian creature named Sectoral, spoke with the gravelly voice of his species. Your forces used psychological weapons that disrupted the neural functions of Corvan personnel. Such attacks on the mind are forbidden by every civilized code of conduct. Electromagnetic pulse weapons have been standard equipment in human military forces for over 2 centuries, Thompson replied calmly. The fact that they affect alien nervous systems is simply a matter of biological compatibility, not intentional. Psychological warfare. The chamber fell silent as delegates tried to process what they were hearing. The humans were not denying their actions. They were redefining them according to standards that the galaxy had never encountered. Every weapon and tactic that seemed horrifying to galactic civilization was being described as routine by human military doctrine. Captain Lisa Brooks, commander of the UES Retribution, appeared via holographic projection to provide a detailed analysis of human military capabilities. The display showed weapons systems and strategic doctrines that had been classified since humanity joined the galactic community 3 years ago. The engagement at New Haven was conducted using what we classify as conventional weapons and standard tactical procedures, Brooks explained. Our forces employed kinetic bombardment, electronic warfare, stealth technology, and coordinated multivector assault patterns. All of these capabilities have been part of human military doctrine for centuries. The Altarian delegate, a tall humanoid with silver skin, interrupted with obvious concern. If these are your conventional capabilities, then what would you consider advanced warfare? Brooks smiled, and the expression was somehow more frightening than any threat. Orbital bombardment using tungsten rods accelerated to near light speed. Biological agents designed to target specific genetic markers. Nuclear weapons ranging from tactical battlefield units to strategic city killers. Chemical warfare using compounds that can eliminate entire ecosystems. And those are just our non-classified systems. The implications of her words hit the chamber like a physical blow. The humans had been operating under restrictions for 3 years, hiding military capabilities that far exceeded anything the galaxy had ever seen. What they had witnessed at New Haven was not humanity unleashed. It was humanity being polite. Vel Thera's crystalline form flickered with energy patterns that indicated extreme agitation. Your species has developed weapons capable of destroying entire worlds. No civilized race would create such instruments of destruction. Thompson nodded grimly. You are correct. No civilized race would develop such weapons. But humanity is not civilized by your standards. We are survivors. Every weapon we have created was designed to counter weapons we had already built. Every tactic we employ was tested against enemies who knew our previous tactics and had developed countermeasures. He activated another display showing the history of human warfare, from ancient battles fought with stone weapons to modern conflicts involving nuclear weapons and chemical warfare. Other species in this galaxy evolved in relatively peaceful environments. You fought against weaker opponents, conquered primitive civilizations, and developed military doctrines against enemies who could not effectively fight back. The display showed battle after battle, each one more sophisticated than the last. Humanity evolved differently. We fought against ourselves. Every conflict was between equally intelligent opponents with access to the same technology and the same tactical knowledge. This created an arms race that has continued for 10,000 years. Dr. Marcus Reed, humanity's chief xenobiologist, joined the presentation via hologram. We have studied the military history of every species in this council. Your conflicts follow predictable patterns because you have never faced existential threats. You develop a superior weapon or tactic, use it to defeat your enemies, and then stop innovating because you have no reason to continue. The chamber was completely silent as the implications sank in. Every species represented in the council had followed the same pattern, developed superior technology, conquer weaker opponents, establish dominance, and then stagnate militarily because there were no peer competitors to drive further innovation. Humans never had that luxury, Reed continued. Every time we developed a new weapon, our enemies developed countermeasures. Every time we created a new tactic, our opponents adapted and created counter-tactics. We have been locked in continuous military evolution for our entire recorded history. The Corvan delegate, one of the few survivors of the Third Fleet, spoke, with the broken voice of a warrior who had seen his entire worldview shattered. How many of these weapons do you possess? How large is your real military force? Thompson looked directly at the alien warrior. Every human world has the industrial capacity to produce nuclear weapons. Every human ship can be converted to military use within hours. Every human civilian has received basic military training. We have been preparing for war our entire existence because war is what we know. The truth was even more terrifying than the weapons themselves. Humanity had not just developed superior military technology, they had created an entire civilization based on the assumption that conflict was inevitable. Every aspect of human society, from education to industry to government, was designed to support military action when necessary. The Corvan Empire has declared war on humanity, Thompson announced. They have attacked our colonies, killed our civilians, and threatened our existence. We have responded with conventional force and achieved decisive victory. This was not aggression, it was self-defense. He paused, letting his words sink in, before delivering the final blow. The Battle of New Haven was fought using restricted rules of engagement. We avoided targeting civilian populations, we minimized collateral damage, and we used only non-lethal capture methods when possible. We were still being polite. The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates realized the full implications of what they were hearing. The humans had defeated the most powerful military force in Corvan space while operating under self-imposed restrictions, designed to minimize casualties and damage. Thompson raised his voice to cut through the noise. Humanity is prepared to coexist peacefully with any species that respects our sovereignty and our right to exist. But we will no longer tolerate attacks on our people or attempts to limit our development through political manipulation. The message was clear. The age of human restraint was over. The galaxy would either accept humanity as an equal partner or face the consequences of a species that had spent 10,000 years learning how to fight wars against itself. Admiral Karen Wright stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed human military command station, watching the steady stream of ships entering and leaving the massive orbital facility. 6 months had passed since the Battle of New Haven, and the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The sleek human warships moved with purpose and confidence, no longer hiding their capabilities or asking permission to exist. The command station itself was a testament to humanity's new position in galactic affairs, built in the debris field, where the Corvan Third Fleet had been destroyed. It served as both a military headquarters and a symbol of what happened to those who underestimated human resolve. The twisted remains of Corvan warships had been incorporated into the station's structure, creating a monument that could be seen from anywhere in the New Haven system. Commander Tony Mitchell approached with the daily status report, his expression showing the satisfaction of an officer who no longer had to watch his people suffer in silence. Admiral, the Galactic Council has officially recognized humanity's claim to all 17 disputed sectors. The Altarian Federation is requesting human military advisors for their border conflicts. The Vegan Confederacy wants to purchase human weapon systems. Wright nodded as she reviewed the datapad. The transformation had been remarkable. Species that had once treated humans as unwelcome newcomers now competed for their attention and protection. The same alien governments that had imposed restrictions on human expansion were now begging for access to human military technology. What about our former aggressors? Wright asked, though she already knew the answer from the intelligence reports that crossed her desk daily. The Corvan Empire has been asking for formal ceasefire negotiations for 3 months, Mitchell replied. They are offering full war reparations, technology transfers, and territorial concessions. Their government has been completely restructured since we eliminated their military leadership. The Corvan Empire had discovered that losing their most powerful fleet was only the beginning of their problems. Human intelligence services had infiltrated their communication networks. Human economic specialists had identified critical weaknesses in their supply chains, and human diplomatic corps had negotiated alliances with every species that had territorial disputes with Corvan space. Through the viewport, Wright could see the UES Vengeance conducting patrol operations in what had once been restricted space. The massive battleship moved with the easy confidence of a predator that no longer needed to hide its strength. Its weapon systems were powerful enough to crack planets. Its defenses could withstand anything in the galactic arsenal, and its crew was trained in combat techniques that other species still considered impossible. Dr. Marcus Reed joined Wright on the observation deck, carrying a tablet with the latest xenobiological analysis data. The other species are calling us the Warburn, he reported with obvious amusement. They have finally realized that while they evolved in relatively peaceful environments, we evolved in constant conflict with our own kind. The term had started as an insult among the more traditional galactic species, but it had quickly become a mark of respect and fear. The Warburn were the species that had learned to fight by fighting themselves, the civilization that had turned warfare into an art form through 10,000 years of continuous conflict. How are they adapting to the new reality? Wright asked, though she could already see the answer in the constant stream of diplomatic requests and trade negotiations. That filled her daily schedule. Better than expected, Reed replied. The Zephyrians have completely restructured their military doctrine based on human tactical manuals. The Dracorians are trying to reverse engineer our stealth technology. Even the Mechari are experimenting with electronic warfare systems. The galaxy was experiencing a military revolution as species that had been stagnant for centuries suddenly found themselves forced to innovate or become irrelevant. Human military advisors were in constant demand. Human weapons technology was being studied by every major power, and human tactical doctrines were being translated into dozens of alien languages. Captain Lisa Brooks materialized as a hologram in the center of the observation deck, broadcasting from her ship patrolling the outer rim of human space. Admiral, we have received another request from the Rigelian Confederacy. They want to establish a formal defense pact with humanity. They are offering exclusive access to their rare mineral deposits in exchange for protection from Corvan raiders. Wright smiled as she considered the offer. The Rigelians had been one of the most vocal opponents of human expansion just 6 months ago. Now they were practically begging for human protection because they had finally realized that their own military forces were hopelessly obsolete. Approved, Wright decided. But make sure they understand that human protection comes with human standards. We will not tolerate the kind of political games that were played against us. The new order was simple and direct. Species that wanted human friendship and protection had to treat humanity as equals. Those that preferred the old system of condescension and manipulation found themselves increasingly isolated as former allies rushed to align themselves with the new galactic power. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Davis entered the observation deck with a communication from Earth Command. Admiral Fleet Command is reporting that recruitment is up 400%. Every human colony is requesting additional military installations. The shipyards are operating at maximum capacity and we still cannot keep up with demand. The human military was expanding at an unprecedented rate as the reality of their situation became clear. They were no longer a small newcomer species trying to find their place in galactic society. They were the dominant military power in known space, and that position came with responsibilities that required massive resources and personnel. Wright looked out at the ships moving through space around the command station, each one representing capabilities that the galaxy had never seen before. How many species have requested formal alliance agreements? 47 so far, Davis replied, including some that we have never had direct contact with. Word is spreading through the entire galactic community that humanity is the only species capable of providing real military security. The transformation was complete. Humanity had gone from being dismissed as a minor species to being recognized as the galaxy's premier military power. The same characteristics that had made them unwelcome in polite galactic society had made them indispensable in the harsh reality of interstellar politics. Dr. Kelly Turner approached the group with the latest intelligence analysis. The psychological impact has been even greater than the military effect. Every species in the galaxy now knows that humans are fundamentally different from them. We did not develop our capabilities by conquering weaker opponents. We developed them by fighting peer competitors. The concept was revolutionary in a galaxy where most species had achieved dominance through technological superiority over primitive opponents. Humanity represented something new and terrifying, a species that had been forged in the crucible of warfare against equally intelligent enemies. The Corvin survivors are still trying to understand how we defeated them so completely, Turner continued. Their military analysts have concluded that human tactical doctrine is impossible to counter because it was designed by people who knew that their enemies would try to counter it. Wright nodded grimly, and they are correct. Every human strategy assumes that the enemy will adapt, will learn, and will develop countermeasures. We have been preparing for intelligent opposition our entire existence. The galaxy was learning that humanity's politeness had never been weakness, it had been a choice. The same species that had produced diplomats like Lisa Carter and scientists like Marcus Reed had also produced warriors like Admiral Hayes and General Thompson. The difference was not in their nature, but in which aspect of human civilization they chose to display. As the twin suns of the New Haven system set behind the debris field that had once been the Corvin Third Fleet, Wright reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy had wanted to test humanity's resolve, to see if the newcomers could be safely ignored or exploited. They had discovered that humans were not just another species to be managed, but a civilization that had spent 10,000 years learning how to survive against impossible odds. The age of human politeness was over. The age of human dominance had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.